the project, like especially the management. Okay, yes.
To commit URLs, because on assignment 3, there isn't a place for us to submit anything.
Okay. Let me double check and change the cameras. Okay, yeah. So thanks for reminding me that one. Uh, or you don't have to send it, but yeah, I'll send an announcement. You can, as long as you put your information there, we can see it. Okay. All right. So we talk about how you're gonna manage the whole project. Okay. As I mentioned, I won't talk too much about the technical things, web services, but then you guys, work at a team, have different assignment of the work. You can have someone to handle the front end, someone to handle the back end. I don't think you need anyone to dedicate to look at the database. It's nothing to look at. Okay, I would say normally the front end takes most of the work, so you might have more people to look at the front end and also obviously the back end. I want to give you some ideas on what the whole software engineering or development process will look like in a company, and then we'll talk about something very specific, which is called Agile development, how you manage all the software development process. So if you remember, I did give you some kind of background in the very first day. What is software engineering? Here is the formal definition that we told you that software engineering is a methodology. It's engineering process that you need to follow, some best practice you follow. The goal is very straightforward. We want you to build a software, we want you to build very good software. What do we mean by good software? Well, there's no bugs. Okay, the software does what the users want, solve their problem issues, but also want to make sure that you're actually doing that one on time. If it's on time, that means it's within budget. So that's what the software engineering is trying to help us. Okay, but these are very theoretical. So what does that mean? In practice, okay, this is what happens. I'm gonna give you one example. So I showed you that I worked in Amazon for just 1 year, and during that 1 year, I was actually in a complete cycle of building one product. So I joined Amazon in 2012, and at that time they had their first version, the Kindle Fire, done. Okay, they released in 2011, and I joined the next year. So by the time I joined, they are about to start the next version of the Kindle Fire tablet. It's just like iPhone 17, they're gonna do iPhone 18. In fact, most of the product they actually have 1 year time to work on. So right now you're looking at the news about iPhone 17, but the teams already started working on iPhone 18. So normally there's a 1 year cycle because you can't just wait for the next year. So normally around this season, they already got the prototype, the hardware for the next year's iPhone. So because you got to figure out the hardware first, and then people build the software. Finally, they need a lot of integration. They also need to give time to the factory to manufacture those. So normally it's a 1 year cycle. So while you're looking at iPhone 17, the 18 is already there. Same thing for here. So they started working on the second generation of the Kindle Fire, and we already got the initial devices. Obviously, that was a very secret. And then we got 1 year to work on this browser. We call it the 2.0. And as I mentioned, we were doing this browser project. We use cloud computing to make the browser faster. So we got a 1 year time to finish it. Okay. So during that 1 year, okay, these are the major steps. Okay, you gotta get requirements. I briefly talked about this one. In Amazon, instead of the bosses directly tell you what to do, they get the requirement from customers. Okay, they got a different kind of a customer calls, the feedback and everything, and then we got a long list of the features. People want to make the browser faster. They want you to support some kind of private mode. They want you some have better support on bookmarks, any of those. So there are a lot of requests. Okay, after that, we need to decide what to work on. Okay, because you're not going to finish everything within that 1 year. So we have a lot of discussions. We need to prioritize things. And that's what I told you when we were doing requirement analysis. So the priority should be decided by the customers. Okay, not necessarily the customer come here to tell you, but we need to have people to analyze all this feedback. We need to know which one is more important, which one is more urgent. So a lot of the time, the teams they rely on the role called a product manager. It's a very popular role today in the big companies. The product manager basically is the person that who should have understanding about the customers, who should have pretty good understanding about the whole domain. The product manager also have background on technical side. At least they know what can be implemented, what is not reasonable. Okay, so it's a very important role that sits in the middle between the customers, the domains, and the tech team. And so they are the one that will decide what kind of feature to work on and which one is more prioritized. Sometimes the team don't have product manager. The development manager might serve the role, or some maybe director serve the role. So there are always someone who understands the business very well to provide requirements and then prioritize that. There will be a lot of meetings and discussions, and then we will have kind of a plan. Okay, for the whole year, this is the feature we're going to implement for the whole year. All right. Once that plan is done, now we're going to dive into the development. Okay, so all the developers, software engineers start to work on this one. And there we're going to introduce very briefly, so, shortly, something called Agile development. So basically, the developers all follow a pattern, kind of a cycles, small cycles that because this project for the whole year, right? So how do we manage that whole year very effectively? We normally break it down into smaller cycles. So every cycle, for example, every month, okay, we have some goals. These are things we want to finish, and then we do that incrementally with different iterations. So that's a very common way. That whole process is called Agile. We'll talk about that one in more details. But every cycle, as we work on the things, okay, it's not just about doing the code. Okay, you need to do some design first, and then you write the code. After the code, you also have to test it. Okay, and once you test it, you do something called code review. That developers can look at the code, make sure everything is good, and then you can push it to GitHub. And after that, you also need to know how do you deploy everything, right? So it's all local, you know, put this into the server, and how can you let the customer to see the latest change? What is that process will look like? Okay. A lot of companies they go through different kind of server, different stages just to be safe. So for example, I made a change. And then the customers are all seeing traffic from Amazon.com, the real page. But your change is not going to go to Amazon.com until you pass maybe two, three, sometimes more environment. There will be a lot of tests in the middle. We really want to make sure all the code you submit is okay. And then finally, your code will go to Amazon.com. Okay, so that's normally the process. So how do we manage that many environment and servers? That's also something that you got to know from software engineering point of view. All right. During that whole development cycle while you're working in the company, okay, you're going to join some very important meetings. You talk about, your daily updates. That happens to something called a daily Scrum meeting. You also have some kind of planning meeting. Every cycle in the beginning, we decide what to work on. Normally, that's called a sprint meeting. And at the end of the sprint, we also have some kind of summary or reflection meeting. So just to kind of see what's going on, what's right, what's wrong, and how do we improve, makes the team more efficient next time. Okay, so there are different meetings to track different progress and do the plan and summary. Okay, and at the end, you release the product. Okay, at the end of a year, at the end of a cycle. But that's not gonna be the end of the project. Most of the project days, unless you just cut it, you don't want to work on it anymore, you have to keep working on it. So once you have the 2.0, you're gonna plan the 3.0, and then you're gonna see bugs, you're gonna see issues, you're gonna see how do we maintain everything, check the logs, get more customer feedback, and do some minor modifications. So that process will also going on and bring you to the next cycle. So sometimes the cycle will bring you a lot of new features. Sometimes the cycle is just trying to maintain more to make sure things are running smoothly. All right, so I showed this one very quickly just that you know that whole year, okay, from the decision to make the 2.0, a lot of things happens. Okay, requirements, priorities, planning, and then development. During the development, code testing, code review, build, deployment, and all the management. And then every day you got a meeting, different type of meetings for different purposes. Eventually you release, and finally you still to do a lot of maintenance work. Okay, so as a software engineer, I will tell you that at the end, the time you spend on coding, um, as you're getting more and more senior, will become less and less. Okay, not necessarily become you become a boss, you do less work. No, you still do a lot of work, but you actually will spend more time on meetings and management and all this kind of procedures. Because the bigger the project is, the more things you need to manage, you need to handle. Let's think about sometimes, like I told you yesterday on Tuesday, the Windows team, 5,000 people working together. How do you even manage those? How do you do the enable communication? How do you make sure that the code here doesn't break other parts? That actually takes a lot of work. So all of these belong to the scope of software engineering. So software engineering is really a methodology. Okay. To be more specific, a lot of best practice people find and to make sure the software development can go through very smoothly. All right. So that's the kind of background. But what I really want to focus today is the specific development I want you to actually follow, which is called Agile development. Okay. For those of you who have done some interns in company, you must be very familiar with. But if you never got a chance to work in the company, probably this is something very new. But this is, again, very simple. Everything we talk in software engineering, very simple. It's just best practices. So the background of Agile development, okay, so you have to understand something about this one called waterfall model. This is a very classical approach in the field of software engineering. Back in the old days, okay, 60s, 70s, 80s, when people were building software, every team, every company is following waterfall model. So this is how waterfall model works. Okay, you got a project, right? So we'll break it down into different phases. As you can see from the very beginning, you do the requirements. Same idea. You gotta get a specs. What do you want to do? What's the input? What's the output? After that, you do the specification. Okay, the requirements is more like informal. You talk to the customer told you, oh, I want a way to manage my inventory. Specification is more technical. Maybe you put that into technical documentation, you talk about the stacks and everything. And then after that, you do the design. So that goes closer to the code. Maybe I draw a UML diagram. I design my class. I draw some relationship. I know how do we put different things into different packages. So closer to the technical things. But all the three stages or phases are mostly based on design. Okay, once we have a complete design, and now we dive into implementation, which is write a code. And everyone sort of write a model of code. Once that one is done, we go to integration. Okay, integration means that we'll put everything together. 5,000 people, everyone has some different code. We got to put everything together, still make sure everything works, and then we do a lot of tests. Okay, once that one is done, and then we do something called maintenance, and keep doing that one until you don't need it, you retire the software. Okay. One thing you can see from the graph here, every step, okay, here at the end, there is something called verify. Okay. So because we want to make sure that you got the whole step finished and verified to be correct in order to move to the next step. If something is wrong, and then you shouldn't actually move to the next step, right? So in other words, one should be done just depend on the other one. Okay, so it's in sequence, go one by one. All right. If you feel something is wrong, then you can go back to the previous one. Once you modify, you come back to here. Okay, that's how it works. Okay, so this model, as you can see, it goes from all the way to the top to the bottom. That's called waterfall. But then the most important thing is that the next step should be depending on you successfully finish and verify the previous step. Okay, so this is actually a very straightforward, a very reasonable way to do a project. Not necessarily just software project, but a lot of other projects, you probably go through the same thing. Think about you build a house, right? So you're not gonna start to do the, machines, everything right on day one. You're gonna do a lot of planning. Okay, you gotta look at city requirements, customer design, and then you start to mold the design. And once you have design, you probably have some kind of nicely generated like the images to show the effect, but you have to go to the detailed architecture design, civil engineering design, all this, big paper stuff. Once you have this one, then you hire people to start to build a house. Once you have the house built, you got to test it, verify it, and then maintain it, right? So very natural way to build any kind of project, right? Um, but let me ask you a question. The waterfall model has been there for so many years. I don't know if any one of you can see any potential issues or limitation about this model. The truth is today, rarely people still using a waterfall model. Okay. There are, from what I know, some of the legacy systems are big companies. One example is JPL, some of our students work there. Some of our teams still using the waterfall model to do this very formal specification design, go to the test, implement and test stuff. I would say 95% of company team today don't use waterfall anymore. So what is wrong with the waterfall model? Can anyone come with some ideas? Yes.
Does it just like take a long time?
Um, like more specific.
You have to verify the steps.
Okay. Okay. Um, the total time will be the same because if this project is this complex, let's say let me ask you this. For example, the browser, right? The browser project, I said I have 1 year to work on it. Um, if this is very common to take 1 year, it will take probably 1 year anyway. It has nothing to do with the with the model you use, sorry, with the approach you use. By just using different approach, it's not gonna make the project simpler. Yeah. Let's assume that the time you need the same, the complexity will be the same. Managing a project into these big cycles, phases, one depending on another one, there's some potential limitations. Yes.
There's some problems you can't figure out that you have until you actually like do it, right?
Yep. So that will be something that we don't want to see. Okay. But then you got to understand if something like that happens, you might already spend a lot of time with the previous steps, and that may produce some waste. Okay, so let me bring you this image back. You just remember this one. Okay, I explained this one, all the different scenario. I told you these are very, very practical. Okay, we talk about some of the interesting ones, like once the customer explain the situation, immediately a misunderstanding happens, and then engineering are building different things and they can't finish it all right. But then one thing I want to remind you, a very risky, a very dangerous part is actually the last one. Okay, even though in the middle we have the engineers handle all of this, it's not very good. Okay, but let's say that you got a really good team. Okay, you got everything right. You understand the requirements, you do the good design, you did the good implementation, and all the document and everything is good. You delivered, and at the end, this one happens. Okay, the customer came to you. Well, actually, I'm sorry, this is not what we want. What I mean is actually I need this one. And you got an elite team, everything is done perfectly, still useless. All right. So this one is very dangerous as a software engineer. Okay, you never want to see this. This is the last thing you want to see. But unfortunately, every single project, okay, you will see this one for sure. Okay, whether it's a big project or small project, as long as this deals with a customer. If this is your own idea, maybe this one less likely to happen. But if you're talking to someone, okay, you're making something for your client or customer, I'll guarantee that this one will happen always. It's just a matter of degrees. Maybe 50% of things, that's not what they want, or maybe 10% of them, or maybe just 90%. But this one always happens. Okay, just remember this. There's no exception. There's no way that you can say, well, I'm very good at communication. I'm very good at writing. I'm not gonna have this issue happening. No way. The problem is that the customers, okay, they know nothing about software. Okay, they don't know what they want to describe this one. It's very difficult for them to describe what they want. Think about, like the other example, I don't know, like doctors. So we don't know anything about the medical things. If I ask you to give me an idea on making a drug for me, you don't even know what to talk about. Okay, it's not your field. So it's not customers' fault because they just don't understand software. They don't know how to describe it. So this kind of thing always happens. But when this one happens, as I mentioned, all the work you do in the middle, a lot of those will be wasted. And it doesn't sound that bad. Well, I just need to change it. I just need to go back to, redo some certain things. Well, then you have to look at how big the project is. If this is an iPhone project, if it's a broader project, I give you 1 year time. Okay. And finally, you deliver this one to like at the end of month 10, let's say October. Okay. You got 2 months left. And then your customer told you that that's not right. You got to change, 30% of them, 50% of them. And then the team started there. There's no way you can finish those. Okay, because you already spent 10 months. Okay. So if this is a small project, small change, fine. This is 2 weeks project, you redo it, it's not a big deal. But if this is a bigger project, 1 year, a lot of projects last for 2, 3 years. In the past, okay, many of the big project that would take multiple years. They spend hundreds of millions of dollars because they pay so many people. All the software engineers are very expensive. And then at the end, anything happens, and then it's just everything is gone. Um, Maybe 5, 10 years ago when Obama was in the president, there was a Obamacare website. You guys don't remember this. If you search the news, you can probably find it. So this one was a pretty big news at that time. The whole thing is a fail. Okay, But basically what this website is trying to do, I don't know if it's still there, it should be still there, but what they do here is that allows you to go there, probably, assess different things, collect your information, give recommendation, all the resources. I never use this one, but this one was there's some like very crazy numbers. Okay, so this one, um, yeah. So this website, okay, initial budget is $93 million. And eventually it costs $1.7 billion, somehow that huge. Okay, you don't have to go to try this website. It's not going to be that complicated. It's just a web application. Okay, obviously the rules, the healthcare rules, insurance rules are very complicated. I agree, but there's no way you need to spend that much money. But well, that's very typical for the government project. Because government, there are a lot of other costs, not just developers. Okay, so we're not talking about that one, but this amount of money, the problem is that you spend all of this at the end, it actually failed. Okay. And also it took so much time. Okay, that's a big disaster for any kind of a software projects. So if you have that kind of project, okay, you got a $100 million budget, $1 billion budget kind of project, you finish that eventually, and someone told you this, and that kind of screw up everything. Okay, it's very, very bad. So the problem with this one, as you can see, is that you won't know that last step until you get some point here, right? The customer will not tell you, I need a tire, until this step. But you might spend the majority of the time in the previous steps. Okay, let's say I have 1 year time, 12 months. I spend 1 month to do the interview to get requirements. I do another month to write a specification. And then our developers start work on the design, 2 months. And then we write a code for 2 months. And then we do testing integration for 2 months. And then 10 months is gone. And now you start to test it with the customer tell you, no, this is not right. And then the 10 months is gone, and there's nothing you can do about it. You have to just running out of the schedule. Yes.
So is the solution then to, I guess there'd be two things like in my mind. Both like asking the right questions of the customer about like what to tease out like what they want in a way that is helpful for the actual process. And also like including them in like sort of throughout that process, like when you're designing, you show them like, hey, here's what we have in our plan with that line with what you're wanting.
Yeah. Well, very, very good points. Okay, two suggestions. Number one, we ask better questions, do better interviews. For sure, that's going to help. Okay, so I told you about something called customer discovery, especially when you do the requirements, ask right question. Instead of asking, okay, I'm going to make this app, how do you like it? They're going to say, yes, this is very good. You ask, different questions, ask their experiences. And the second one is that as you do the design, some of this one, try to involve them as early as you can so that they give you feedback, right? So very helpful, but that's not going to solve the problem completely. Because if you can do a good job, if a customer already understand those, give you because you have an assumption that there is a possibility you can get everything right here. But in practice, it's very difficult because it's a design. It's a design. It's not like a house. I can give you a 3D model. You can look around. You can pretty much know if that's right or wrong. But this is software. Okay. A software is a code. It's very abstract. You can't really feel and try it until you got a final product. That's the best way for customer to give you feedback. So it's a little bit difficult to do that in the beginning. Okay. So that basically means that the customer always gonna make mistakes. Okay. Any other suggestions? We can lower the risk or lower the cost. Okay. The situation is that this one always going to happen. Okay, you can't avoid it. There's because they're domain experts. They don't know coding. Okay, you can't avoid this one. So besides doing good interview, asking good question, involve the customer in the design phase, what else you can do? Yeah.
Can we build one small feature and then ask that person like, hey,
Yeah.
is that what you want? And then if no, then we can roll back and basically do
Yeah,
the same.
exactly. So which means that we're gonna bring this part here, this one, we let this one happen early. Okay, I have 12 months. I can't afford to tell you this one in month 10. Well, I got you to tell me this one in month 1. Okay, which share the similar idea as we asked you this one a little bit early. But in this time, I'm not just asking about the design. I want you to see the actual final product, the running prototype, the running code. Now you tell me if that's right or wrong. If you can tell me that on the month one, that's fine. I'm gonna redo it. It's not a huge issue. But then you might be wondering, okay, so how does that happen? Well, this is a 1 year project. How can you get things done in the first month? There's no way you can get this thing done in first month. So the only way we can do this is I cut the features. I'm not gonna finish everything for you within 1 month. I only gonna do 10% of the project for you within that 1 month. But I still build it. I don't plan a huge thing. I just plan, you have 20 features. I'm only gonna do 3 features for you for this month only. But at the end of this month, come to check it out. Tell me if this is right or wrong. If it's wrong, that's fine. I'm gonna go ahead and fix it quickly. So that's the fundamental way to solve the problem, which is to break this giant big waterfall model into a smaller waterfall model. Okay. Instead of planning a whole year with just these 5 stages, each stage take 1 or 2 months, every month we go through this whole complete process. But then you only finish 10% of the work. It's not going to be complete, but at least the customer get to see something, can give you some sort of feedback. That's going to greatly improve the feedback process, and then you can get feedback earlier. It will help to reduce the risk better and better. So that kind of idea is called Agile development. It's extremely simple. Okay, nothing hard to understand, but you do want to understand why we're using this one. Today, you go to a company, everyone gonna tell you or don't tell you that we're using Agile, and you might have, what is that? And once they understand, okay, we have this sprint meeting and everything. Yeah, you're gonna follow it, but you gotta understand once you learn software, why we use this one. This is a fairly new concept, came in about 2000, okay, around 2000, not a very new one. Well, obviously it's already 25 years, but before that was all waterfall, all waterfall. There are reasons because this one came in later, because in old days, there are not many software systems, okay? And most of the systems are pretty big, like you build a operating system, there are not many people actually using it. Well, at that time, the computer wasn't that popular, and now you have software that's already really good. These days, so different. Okay, people, we got a much picky, right? So you got an app, you got a website. If the website is slow, you don't open it. If the app, UI is not good, you don't want to use this one. If the feature is not convenient, you're gonna switch to something else. So customer become much more pickier, and that's why you really need to handle their requirements much better. To summarize, Agile development very similar to waterfall model. But we just want you to break the big development cycle all the time you have into smaller ones. So every cycle, you do the complete process, okay? But in order to do that, you cannot finish all the work. So what we ask you to do is that you put everything you have to finish, we call it backlog. Okay, all the features, all the changes, a long list. Every cycle, you pick a small subset of it as your work goals. Okay, this cycle, I just want to finish this 5 tasks, 10% of the tasks. And now everybody work on this cycle. The cycle normally between 2 to 4 weeks. Sometimes I see 1 week, 4, but very rarely you see more than 4 weeks. 2 or 3 weeks are very, very typical. However, remember, during that 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, we want you to finish everything. Okay, it's not just the design. Okay, it's the coding, testing, deployment, everything ready. Although the software may be not complete, you don't have this button to click. This one's still great. Okay, you still see what we haven't implemented, but you can see this button, that button. Okay, and then at the end, we ship it. Okay, we give it to the customers. We want them to try and see, give us feedback. If they approve it, if you like it, and then we move on to the next cycle. All right, so that's the idea of Agile development. Very easy, okay? It's a smaller cycle, anywhere between 1 to 4 weeks. A lot of a new team, they do a 1 week cycle because in the beginning, a lot of things go faster. They want to build things faster. Most of the big teams, they do 2 or 3 weeks. The bigger the team is, the cycle probably would be longer because it takes longer to build new things, okay? And then in the beginning of a cycle, we do a lot of planning. And at the end of the cycle, we do some kind of a summary and a reflection. And during the cycle, we do a lot of daily meeting. That's how the sprint works. Okay, some of the roles here. All right, so as I mentioned, you have a product owner. Product owner is like a manager or product manager that handles the features, decide what to work on, priorities, everything. Okay. And then you have all the team members, which are mostly developers. We talk about development team, software engineering team. And then we have a Scrum Master. Scrum Master is someone who manages the whole process. Okay, check the status, do the planning. I'll talk more about planning a little bit later. Sometimes you will see the product manager and Scrum Master with the same guy. Could be a development manager, sometimes split. Sometimes Scrum Master coming from one of the team members. It's engineers, and the people take turn to be the Scrum Master. So that's a very typical setup. All right. And then, as I mentioned, every cycle they work together. They do the complete process. Okay, they plan, they design things, implement and test are very important, and demo is very important. Demos of the product manager, demos of the customers, and then we check the feedback and we come back to fix. All right, so that's called Agile development. Very simple. So what we want you to do, every team, is that you guys are already having a team, okay? And then you need to decide some kind of cycles, development cycles. Since we only have about 10 weeks left, you should just do 1 week cycle, I think. Every week you should have some plan, the goal to fit it. You don't have to be very aggressive to do a lot of things, but we need to finish that within 1 week. Yes.
Do you go back to the waterfall model for a moment?
Yeah. So you can do 2 weeks, but I would suggest 1 week. Okay. So beginning somehow you should have some meetings to decide what to do. End of the week, well, you better just finish it. Okay, we'll talk about deployment something later. In the recent week, you can get a little bit longer, but once you know everything, once you set up everything, you should really move on quickly, like weekly, week by week. All right. Now, I'll give you some more details on how do you execute this one. Okay, so when we're following Agile development, there are certain important practices you do. I showed you that for the Agile development, you have a lot of tasks. These days, we don't write a lot of this long formal documentation about the software. In the past, in the waterfall model, because you think about you have dedicated months just to do the specification design. And people come out with a long documentation, very formal, very technical ones, describe the features and everything diagrams. We don't do that anymore today because it's very difficult to decide those in the beginning. People spend very little amount of time to write down the requirements, and people want to do it in a very simple, concise way, very efficient way. They just write down the user stories. That's why you see they call it a backlog. A log is a bunch of logs, record, simple, short stuff. Okay, so most of the time people write something called a user story. Okay, so this is something you guys need to do. Okay, you have this big project. You kind of know the feature. I want to manage the schedule, recommend. I forgot some of the typical ideas we talk about, like time management, all of this. Okay, that's a big project, but you can break it down into a lot of small features. Okay, how do we write it? You can follow a format called user stories. Here's the format. As the role, I wanted something so that I can achieve some kind of goals. Okay, here example. As an admin, I want to download a page views as a CSV file so that I can graph them in an Excel sheet. All right. See, this is a very concise, very effective way to describe a feature. You should talk about who is the user to use this feature and what kind of function you want to have. And also talk about why you need this. That will help the engineer to design a way that help you to get that experience. Maybe, based on that goal, you don't have to use this feature. You can use something even simpler. Okay, so any kind of project, okay, you got to think about all these user stories. Okay, as a college student, I want to be able to see all my friends' schedule so that I can, find out a common time to meet effectively. Okay, as a college student who like to do the fitness, I want to be able to see, get a daily recommendation for the diet based on my current status, something like this. Okay, write down all these features as user stories. Okay, now obviously break it down. You want to control the granularity, not too big, but not too small. And then that's how you can form that kind of a logs. Okay, then it will be easier for you to split that, give it to different people to work on. Once you have this, Well, number one, you got to prioritize this. Okay, because we told you you have a long list of things to finish for the project. This is only for 1 week or 2 weeks. Which one to work on? Focus on priorities. Very important. Okay, especially for our project because our time will be limited. Once you go through the midterm, you will get busier. A lot of other projects I'm going on, you have less time. We're not asking you to finish everything because we didn't tell you what to do. For projects, there's no end. You can always keep working, but you always go with the priorities. So for example, a lot of students start to build the login authentication, and some people want to do very secure like a architecture. Some of the team want to do like a Google login, those. Um, I won't call those as prioritized tests. Okay. Security is very important, but it's only important when you have a large uh, company, a lot of users. Okay. Like Google. Okay. They can't afford any kind of security issues. But for your project, it doesn't matter because nobody is even going to use that. So, but then if you build a very nice, sophisticated login authentication system, it's not going to help you solve the problem. Remember the problem trying to solve. I want to find a problem, solve the problem. How do we efficiently organize our schedule? I want to find the best diet for my fitness plan, right? So focus on the problems first. Those tasks and stories are more prioritized, okay, not the non-functional ones. Okay, once you have this thing launched and then you start work on promotion those, then gradually come back to fix those non-functional issues. Okay, so prioritize things. Okay, so normally you need to have some kind of discussion with your team based on your understanding, try to reach agreement. Okay, and then, but the most important thing also, it has to go to the customers. Really focus on the problems. Okay, because time is limited, resources limited. One day you do the startup, you will face the same situation. You don't have money, you don't have developers, but you want to show something to the investor quickly. You always want to impress them by showing them your solution can solve that specific problem. Okay, so prioritizing looks easy, but always use the problem to drive, okay, to help yourself to make decision. All right. Now you got a long list with priorities. You already order them and sort them, right? But the next thing to do is that, okay, this week we're gonna finish. So right now we have 20 tasks. It's being ordered by the priorities. We know what to work on first. But how do we make a plan? Should we work on 3 or 5 or 6? Or I have 10 weeks left, I have 20 issues or features. And every week I'm gonna do 2, I do an average. Obviously, that's not reasonable because it depends on how hard that issue is, how hard the task is. So once you have a priority, the next thing you need to do for all the lists is to estimate the efforts. Okay, because again, it's not just based on the numbers, it's based on the efforts. This task, is just one single thing, but it requires multiple people to work on for many days. Maybe we'll only do this one thing for this week. Okay, so the efforts is so important. But then nobody define efforts. And also efforts depends on the developers. If you give something to, some of the top developer, they can probably do it one day. But if you give it to the juniors, they maybe spend 1 week to learn it. Okay. So this part also need to be decided by the developer, by the whole team. Okay. Inside the professional teams, a lot of the time people do some estimate. So they give every single task or log a number or some kind of indicator on how complicated it is. A very common way to say this task needs 4 hours or 1 hour or 2 hours. Or they just give some kind of a points. Not here, but sometimes people give just points. Sometimes people give stars, whatever. But I would say hours are very common to see, okay, because it's very concrete. All right. But then here there's a problem that, as I mentioned earlier, because if I know this one very well, I think this one only going to take me 1 hour, and then you just learned it. You said, well, I need to spend 8 hours on it, and how are we going to make a conclusion, right? So it obviously doesn't just go with either way. We have to balance this one. We have to discuss this one, bring to the team. Interestingly, in the practice, a lot of people do this type of practice, which is to be very, very effective. Okay, so what they want people to do, want people to vote, but they want people to vote at the same time. Because think about if I'm the senior guy, I said, well, come on, this is so easy. I think only 1 hour is enough. And then nobody else is gonna speak anything. And then we got in trouble. Okay. Because if you say, oh no, I think this one needs 8 hours and only show that you're not very capable. So you're not going to talk about it, right? So that's very bad. So team don't want to see that. That's why people want everyone to show your opinions. So a lot of time they give you a poker card. Okay, so we all think about it, estimate the efforts, and then we all show the card at the same time. And if you see, okay, everyone is estimating this one to be 2 or 3, that's great. So that means this is a test that should be around that range. But all of a sudden, a couple of people showed 1 hour, a couple of people showed 8 hours. There has to be some issues. Maybe the people who showed 8 hours didn't know some the right way to do or a shortcut to do, or maybe the ones who showed 1 hour underestimate certain challenges, right? So then we discuss, you tell me why you think this need longer, you tell me why you need shorter, and then we make some reasonable conclusion at the end. So this approach looks simple, but it's very effective. It solves a lot of problems. But every test had to have a very dedicated, agreed estimate numbers. Okay, most of the numbers are based on the hours, but something I need to explain. 4 hour doesn't mean that you need to finish 2 tasks per day based on your 8 hour schedule. A lot of time in the company, in the 4 hours, pretty much people expect you to finish doing it in one day, because you also need other time for meetings. You need the time to do the like code review, checking stuff. Sometimes even take 2 days. So the hour is not exactly the number of hours you really have to finish this one, but it's just kind of estimate. But different team may have different kind of expectations. Some teams in Amazon at the end, when the team get very big, the 2 hour task sound like a 1 day's work. Okay, because you do have a lot of random other things to do. But different team have different expectations. Also, you rarely see the task bigger than 4 hours, because if it's something very big than 4 hours, that means you need to break it down, because it's very hard for you to plan or estimate a kind of a 24-hour task. Okay, 30-hour task. There's no way you can estimate that way. It's too much. So break it down, make it smaller. That way people can accurately estimate, 1, 2, 4. So sometimes people use Fibonacci numbers like 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, something like this. Only these choices. So, yeah. Anyway, so they have different practices. Estimating efforts, you know the priority, then you can make a plan. We got 3 people in the team. We got a 1 week cycle. How many tasks we can finish? And everyone can only work on, for example, we do our project for 3 hours per day. Everyone has 15 hours per week. And that adds up total 45 hours. So maybe the task in total should be 45 hours. Does that give you some kind of a justification on how you do a good planning? Okay. So everything sounds very straightforward, but in practice, it's very difficult, okay, because you're dealing with very complicated, uncertain tasks. How do you estimate that? How do you understand every developer's specialty, their time, their work status, like style, everything to balance that? It's almost impossible to make a perfect planning. Sometimes you go too much, sometimes you go too less, but that's why every cycle you have to adjust it. Okay. So that whole process is called agile development. Okay. Okay. Once the thing is done, we start to do a work. Okay. Every day we're gonna assign those issues to different people. We have this 20 features to implement this cycle. We got 5 people. And then everyone gonna pick something from that 20. You just do one thing each time. Okay. Sometimes the manager assign it. Sometimes you pick it. You can always discuss. That's all based on your preference. And everyone got a task, we start to do the work. All right. And then based on the estimate, you may spend different time to finish it. That's why every day there's a very important meeting called a Scrum meeting. Okay, daily Scrum. Sometimes people call it stand-up meeting. The reason is that a lot of time people actually have this meeting while they're standing up. Okay, because they don't want to have this meeting too long. Normally the meeting happens in the beginning of the day. Sometimes it's the end of the day. Very rarely it's in the middle of the day. So what they do, as you can see from here, is that all those little stickers are the tasks, issues. Okay, you already decide to work on. And then they have different columns. Okay, maybe the previous image is better. They have a column that something called a not checkout. That means nobody is actually working on this one yet. And then the checkout means something is checkout, someone is working on it. And then if it's finished, and then you move it to that. All right. So during the stand-up meeting, you'll be surprised. A lot of teams do use the stickers because it really helps you on this in-person kind of communication. It's very clear. Okay, and then everyone can see the progress. In the beginning of the cycle, most of the things on the left. At the end of the cycle, most things should be moved to this part. Okay, so in the meeting, everyone goes through what you did yesterday, and they summarize that, and then if it's already done, that's great. We're gonna move the sticker to here. If you're still working on it, that's fine. And what's your plan? I'm gonna finish this one. And also you will talk about anything like blocks your work, anything you need to bring to the team for discussion. So that meeting is called a Scrum meeting. Okay, sometimes called a stand up. It's a very important meeting. I'll spend more time next time to tell you why this meeting is so important and how can you do a very effective meeting like this. But this one helps people understand the progress. Are we on schedule? Are we behind the schedule? Anything we need to address to speed up or anything? Okay. Obviously, a lot of people do this online. They use different digital tools. They don't do the like the paper things. But the idea is the same. Okay. So this is also part of the Scrum meeting. As I mentioned, at the end of the sprint, okay, that's 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you finish. Okay, we need to have some kind of meeting to review everything, to reflect how things go. Did we, planting too aggressively? We had too many things we didn't finish, or we kind of planned too easy. Well, then we make some adjustment. We took a look at why we made the wrong estimates. Okay, so at the end, the whole cycle should work better and better and more efficiently. We start to know each other's style, we know our pace, we understand our project better. The cycle, the planning will become more effective. Okay, so every cycle, we want to see some improvement. All right. So these are some of the major things I want to share with you about Agile development. You can find a book about Agile. I never wrote those book because in practice, that's basically what I have seen. I'll tell you that's exactly what happened in Amazon. Amazon pretty much represent the major development company. You will see similar things in any other company. It will be the same style. Different team, they might adjust some of the details a little bit, but the core idea is the same. Okay. Sprint will be defined, how many weeks, and the team member's role will be defined. Backlog always there. And always there is a very important planning meeting because the planning meeting decide what to do for the next cycle. That reflection meeting not always happens. Okay, so but a formal team they still do that. That all adds together. That's the Agile development. Right. Any questions? For those of you who have done internships, anything you see like differently, the things your team run differently, or some of the steps, or something interesting you find? Or how many of you have done some kind of Agile in a intern company in a part-time? Yeah. Was that similar process?
Yeah, pretty similar. Like I'm part of one of the clubs I'm in is using that sort of method this year.
How long is the cycle? Sprint.
Yeah, we do like 1 week because it's like a check-in for
One week, right?
Yeah, because we have our weekly meetings.
Yeah. Do they do that daily meeting?
Yeah, it's not everyone on the team, it's just the team leaders.
Yes. So the Scrum meeting, daily meeting, not for big company, they're definitely gonna do that every day. But some of the small company, they don't follow that too. Sometimes you imagine like they probably do a weekly, like a checkout meeting. But the best practice is do the daily because obviously that give everyone pressure and we can see the progress. Yeah, but that's why they want to keep the meeting very short. Okay, the stand up is a very common practice. Yeah. All right. Now these are just the series. Okay, for your project, you need some tools to do this one. Okay, today pretty much we don't need to use other tools, just use GitHub. In the past, in the company, people use something called Jira. This is the larger ones. Inside company. Okay, like this one is very famous. This tool. It's like a very typical software project management tool. As you can see the screenshot, something like this. That's how they kind of plan, the tests in different columns and move the tests around. So this is one of the famous ones. There are what others? Normally, big company use their own tools. Okay, but there are something called Trello. This one, yeah, this one. Similar. Okay, this one used to be also very popular. And then there is oh yeah, there in the startup they use something called a pivotal tracker. So I don't know if this still exists. Yeah, this one here. Similar styles. But now because the code are already in GitHub, so it makes perfect sense for GitHub to do this one. So all you need to do is go to GitHub to create a project. Don't use other tools, okay? Unless you're really into certain tools. Just go here to create a project. I haven't used them for a long time, but looks like they have a lot of things. You just do the typical like team planning. And if you create a project, that's it. Okay. To do is your backlog in progress and then done. If you want to add more, you want to say, okay, I want to have like a backlog. Okay, you can add those. Okay, out to the backlog. And then you could actually move this one. Oops. All right, you can see this is your backlog. Okay. So in the beginning, right now, this is something you need to do. Okay, you write a lot of things, for example, I do a login, I create an issue, give a title here. And then you got to describe what you want to do, okay? And you're gonna say as in anatomy, we need to log in to the system so that I can see the dashboard of all the activities. Obviously, the more detail, the better, and follow the right, format. So here you're gonna create a lot of those. I'll just create things very quick. Okay, so here, how do we create things? Yeah, this one. This one we'll call it like a database setup. This one we'll do like what is it? Homepage. Call it like an anime portal. These are not good issues, okay? You just need to write more details, follow the user stories, other things. Try to describe those as we'll call it a back like a query API. All right. So let's say you can write all of this one, it's in the backlog. So in your planning meeting, you always need to go through this one to prioritize those. Okay. So I told you that logging isn't really that important. Let's move it to the end. Okay. I think database is very important. Otherwise, you can't really do it. And then you might want to start with the backend APIs, and that's how you can build the front end pages. The front end goes afterwards. Just that simple logic. No. All right. And then that's the first step. Okay. Prioritize things. And after that, you got to estimate it. So I think this one also support estimation. If you go here, open the details, a lot of things to specify. You can specify due date and everything, but the most important thing here is estimate. Okay, so this is going to be a 2-hour task. I'll put a 2. And this one will be longer. Maybe this one will be a 4-hour task. Okay, this one will be a 4-hour. This one will be also 4-hour. Okay, this one will be 3 hours. All right, once you have this, the estimator there, see that total estimate is kind of a total efforts work you have to finish. And then we decide we do one week cycle, okay? And then we got 3 members. And then we're very busy, okay? Everyone only work 2 hours per day, okay? So this week we want to do this one, and we do this one. So that to do is our sprint to do. So this is your backlog. Okay, that's the whole thing you want to finish for a project. But this cycle, think about some customer want to see it. This is the thing they want to see it. All right. And then once you have this one, well, once you start, we're gonna assign those. Okay. You have to assign this one to someone. Since you all have organization, this is very important. You gotta explicitly tell someone who own this project. There should be some kind of a deadline. Okay. And then that's it. All right, so that's one task. And then the other one also assign it. If you want to work on something, make sure it's assigned. Very important. Otherwise, At the end, people have confusions, they don't know their responsibilities. And then when I started working on, I have two things to do, but I'm gonna start working on this one first. I'm gonna move on this one to progress. In the progress, I had some issues. And I'll talk about like partially set up, just need more test. Okay, I can make a comment so people can see what's going on. I can see waiting for the cloud provider to give us the new machine. Something like this. Okay, it's really a communication tool here. All right, but then you do your work. Remember, this is a project management, nothing to do with the code, just project management. Finally, I have this one done. I'm gonna move over here to done. This is finished. Okay, and I think it can eventually like a close. It's already closed. You can see. If you put it done, it means it's finished. And if you think you want to go back, you can reopen it. And now I move on to the next one. I go here, and until I finish it. All right. So think about this one. It's just your sticker, different columns. But if you have 5, 7 of that together, that will be very organized, right? So everyone we will know the progress. We also know actually if you did your work. Okay. Well, others are moving to the right, and then you just stick here. What's wrong? Okay. Do you have any challenges you want to help? So that whole process is called Agile development. All right. So normally when you join a meeting, join a company, join any team, you will get some kind of invite in your calendars to know when is the sprint, when is the planning meeting, when is the daily scrum meeting. Okay, so you gotta make sure you show up those. Some of those meetings are really important. So I'll explain more things next time. All right. So today is just a very quick summary on what Agile is. And after this, I'll give you another assignment. You need to set up the GitHub projects with your team, create all the issues, assign it, try to meet regularly. This is very important. Okay, so make sure you guys have some kind of weekly meeting. Okay, otherwise, very soon you will find some member is going to be disappear, and that's not good because you're going to lose someone to do the work, which means you will have more work to do, and also you will have some kind of argument at the end. Okay, I'll tell you, every single semester, teams came at the end to argue. Not every team, okay. On average, maybe one team per semester came, tell me someone never showed up. Don't give him a or they have some kind of fights going on. The worst case I've seen is that the team split up into two teams and then they present the two versions of the project at the same class. But that happened all the time. Okay, you know what's going on with the team project, but if you involve everyone into the regular meeting, at least that helps. Okay, and then make sure they got assigned. When you get doing a meeting, just open the portal, check out the progress, ask everyone to do the updates. That's very effective. Okay, that means everyone need to show and talk something. Okay. All right. So that's all I want to share, guys. Next week I'll talk about those things.